This experience was legitimately one of the most terrifying things that's happened to me walking my dog, and he's done some weird stuff. So back in 2015, I had the choice of getting a dog and getting a smartphone. I had never had a dog in my life, or a decent phone come to think of it, and I had been saving up for a phone anyhow, so naturally I picked the dog. My dad knew a fellow who had a couple of border collies that had recently had a litter. So we drove out and the dude gave me the last pop. Enter Bailey. A couple weeks after we got his shots, I started taking him for walks. My parents figured I was going to be hanging out at the local park with my new pup, so I could get him socialized, but no. I chose to take him around the perimeter of a nearby farm to keep the farm dog in him. I had been sneaking out to this farm for years. The farmer was an old family friend, and my uncles had grown up working for him, so I knew if I was ever caught, I could just drop their name. On either side of the farm, there was some thick woodland, which no one had ever given me a reason to be wary of, and they probably should have. So, it's a sunny afternoon. It had been pouring down all week and Bailey was itching for a good walk. I take him to the farm at our usual time, and we start making our way around to the woods on the east side of the farm. Everything's quiet, but Bailey keeps darting away from me to explore. He's a puppy and it's what they do, but of course I had been calling his name all the way around the field. We were about halfway past the woods, and I could see the roof of the farmhouse over the next hill. Bailey had been pulling crap out of the bushes all the way along, and I had just gotten him in trouble for rolling in a pile of fox crap. And that's when I heard a man's voice calling my dog by his name. Like this dude I didn't even know was calling my dog by name. I knew it wasn't the farmer because I had met him at family events like barbecues and weddings, so I knew what his voice sounded like. I go completely silent, but the guy keeps calling at my dog. It sounds like he's deep into the woods and maybe moving. He's calling my dog with an excited tone in his voice, which is what creeps me out the most. Bailey, meanwhile, is completely ignoring this guy and sniffing the now flat pile of poop. I'm like a tiny 18-year-old girl. The most combat experience that I have is a month learning Taekwondo when I was 11. I don't have a phone. If that guy works out to be where I am, I'm screwed. And if Bailey decides to go in after him, I'm double screwed, because I'm not letting a possible psycho get his hands on my puppy. I can either run to the farm, which isn't too far, or run back through the field towards home. I pick up my dog and I sprint across the field. Behind me, I hear someone emerge from the woods, but I'm already over the fence and sprinting back home with my puppy tucked under my arm. I get home and I tell my mom. She brushes it off as some weird drunk guy. A few weeks later, I'm at my uncle's house and the farmer walks in. I told my uncle what had happened, so he brings it up. The farmer asked exactly which woods I had been close to, and that some of his clothes had gone missing from his washing line. He had put it down to strong winds, but now he's not so sure. I take him and my uncle to the exact spot the next day, and all three of us go in and find a completely wrecked campsite. There are no clothes or anything, but the tent had collapsed in on itself. There's no fire, but there are some empty gas canisters, like you would use for a portable stove, and empty packets of food scattered everywhere. We report it to the police, but nothing ever really comes of it. Except that I got a phone not long after, and I keep it on me whenever I go out. This happened to me just last Tuesday, and I can't stop thinking about it. I'll start this off by saying that I'm a 30-year-old female who lives with my fiance and our two dogs. I have two huskies. One is 2 and the other one is only 4 months. My huskies are not guard dogs to save life. They don't bark or howl, These dogs just love people so much. My brother-in-law and friends have walked in on multiple occasions, and the dogs don't make a peep. So anyways, it's 8 p.m. and it's dark out. I'm home alone, fiance at a hockey game. I'm in the bathroom with the door closed and the blow dryer going, so I can't really hear anything going on around me. That is until I hear one of the dogs howling. I stop the dryer and I listen, thinking that the dogs are fighting again. And then I hear a faint knock and the dogs start going crazy, barking, howling, and jumping into the bay window so bad I thought they would break it. I'm thinking, what the heck is making them go crazy like that? Maybe it's another dog or a skunk. I look out my bedroom window, as it was the closest view to the front door for me. Well, lo and behold, there are two men in hoodies standing at the front door. They start knocking louder, and this time, my 2-year-old husky jumps from the bay window to the front door and starts growling and ramming his body into the door. I'm watching this all happen from my bedroom. As the dog jumps into the door, one of the men jumps back, startled. They look at the other guy and they just walk away. I called my fiance and told him to get home ASAP. I watched them walk away down the road. They weren't selling anything, so they didn't stop at other houses. I was so creeped out, and I still am. But thank goodness for my crazy dogs. Okay, before I get into the story, there are a few things I need to explain about my country, South Africa, for you to fully understand the story. In South Africa, it's normal to have high brick walls with electric gates, electric fences, alarms, etc. And the crime here can be pretty bad. It's also pretty normal to have big gardens. My family and I are big animal lovers, so at the time, we had 6 dogs. 2 Shar-Peis, 2 German short-haired pointers, and 2 dachshunds. With that being said, our dogs roam freely in and out of the garden, as it's obviously enclosed. We usually leave the veranda door open during the day for them to do their thing. Another thing about South Africa, it's normal to have a live-in domestic worker, a maid, or a gardener. Like the average family usually employs them. It's not only for wealthy people, which seems to be a thing in other countries. For the story, our DW is Ellie, and our gardener is Vince. So, this happened in 2007 and I was 9 years old. My older brother was 10, and I had just gotten our first cell phones that day. My dad surprised us after work. You may think it's a bit young, but it was used for emergencies or to communicate with our parents. Anyways, it's an important piece of info for the story. We don't usually leave our veranda door open at night, due to security reasons, but I remember it being a hot summer night that night. So of course, this night of all nights, the veranda door was wide open, and the dogs were doing their thing in the garden. My brother and I were in my parents' room setting up our new cell phones, all excited. Nellie's daughter, Anne, who's like an older sister to us, she was 18, was helping my brother and I. My dad was somewhere in the house and my mom was in the bath. I specifically remember Anne having a comment about how the dogs would not shut up and how annoying it was. And that's when I noticed it too. Sure, they would bark, but it was usually the dachshunds that yapped when the bigger dogs just chilled. Plus, it would only happen for a few minutes and then they would get over it. But something was different that night, as even the bigger dogs were barking nonstop. My dad appeared in his room and mentioned to us that he had noticed the dogs' incessant barking, and he was going to go check if everything was okay. No alarm bells went off on my head, and I don't believe my dad thought anything was amiss either, because my brother had asked to investigate with him, and my dad agreed. I was obviously too engrossed in my new Sony Ericsson. My dad ventured out to our garden with my brother in tow. When my dad had noticed that the dogs were all grouped, growling and going nuts at the dark corner behind our in-the-ground swimming pool. The best way to describe it is our garden beyond our pool hits like a slight decline. So we have a few steps leading down the hill to the bottom end of our garden. We usually have a lamp that lights it up, but my dad had noticed how that lamp seemed to be off, which confused him because he could have sworn it worked the other night. Either way, my dad said he got his gut-wrenching feeling because of this and because of how out of character the dogs were acting. He called after them and they would usually come running, but tonight they all seemed to just look at him and then turn back around and continue going crazy at this dark corner down the steps. My dad told my brother to go back inside of the house and get a torch, sort of using it as an excuse for my brother not to come with him because of his feeling. When my brother went back inside, my dad slowly approached the steps. He noticed how the dog seemed to be snapping at whatever it was, hiding just out of view in the darkness. As he got to the steps, he noticed that the lamp was smashed. Confused, he inched to these steps, and as he put two and two together, it was too late. My dad, being an ex-vet and avid hunter, felt something cold against his temple, and immediately knew that it was a gun. Out of the darkness stepped 4 other men in balaclavas, all armed. Shocked, he stood frozen on the steps. The man holding the gun to his head was instantly aggressive, and asked him where my brother was. That he saw my dad come out with my brother, but my brother went back into the house. Why? My dad said something came over him, and before he knew what he was saying, he responded with, "He's gone inside to press the panic button." As he said that, he saw how all of these guys started to panic. They started speaking in a different language. It's not common for people to speak it, but my dad had actually grown up on a farm where he learned it fluently because of the farm workers. The aggressive guy holding the gun said in a different language, "Crap, the cops will be here any minute. Let's just kill this guy and grab what we can and go." The others seemed apprehensive, and a smaller guy seemed really on edge, and continued to say how he can't go back to jail again, and that they needed to get the heck out before the cops showed up, which would be any minute. He was panicking. My dad then fed on this guy's fear. My dad then interrupted them, speaking English, pretending to not understand what they were saying, and said that we usually have armed response vehicles that drove in our area, and since my brother had pushed the panic button so long ago, they'd probably be here any second. And that did it. My dad watched as their plan unraveled before them, and the smaller scared guy started freaking out all of the other guys, saying that they needed to leave ASAP or else they would be caught. He seemed to make the others more nervous and lose confidence, until they started full-on bickering amongst themselves, their plan slowly turning to crap, as a third guy put it. The aggressive one, pointing the gun at my dad's head, slowly lowered it as they had started fighting, losing focus on my dad and shifting his focus onto his crew. My dad then used this as an opportunity to slowly back up the steps and turn to dart to the house. As luck would have it, as my dad ran into the veranda door, my oblivious brother was heading out with a torch. My dad scooped him up under his arm mid-ran and sprinted into the house, not even closing the door behind him. Silly, I know, but I think he just wanted to get my brother inside as quick as possible, without even thinking. Anne and I were obviously also oblivious to everything when my dad rushed through the bedroom door, slammed it shut, and told us to go upstairs into the attic, that there are 5 guys with guns outside, and they're here to hurt us. Get upstairs now. And my heart sank. I remember my body automatically responding and me sprinting to the stairs with Anne right behind me. My mom ran out of the bathroom in a towel, not too far behind. We sat there in the darkness and silence. I swear that you could hear a pin drop. I think we were all just waiting to hear something below us in the rooms. My mom cursed, saying that she didn't have a phone, and neither did my dad. but in my hand was my brand new Sony Ericsson. No better emergency to use it than right now. My mom dials the police and, I kid you not, they asked where we lived. We explained and they told us that it wasn't in their jurisdiction. Sorry. Click and the line went dead. We're now not only crapping ourselves, but we're flabbergasted too. My mom starts cursing like a sailor again, and that's when my dad realizes, dang, he didn't close the veranda door. And what about Ellie and Vince, who are in their rooms, blissfully unaware of the danger that they're in? He gets his firearm in the safe in the attic and tells us that whatever we hear, to not come downstairs, to stay hidden no matter what. Now I'm sobbing, begging my dad not to leave us, but he tells us that he has to go and get Ellie and Vince before something bad happens to them. Now, there's even more tears, as reality hits that there's 2 other people still in danger. And understandably in hysterics because she's also fearing for her mom downstairs. My dad disappears and the air is thick with tension. We can still hear the dogs going crazy, indicating that those men were still on our property. My mom then calls another number, the armed security that drives around the area, and they say that they'll be over in about 10 minutes. They say to wait and stay hidden until they ring our bell at the gate. We all wait in silence, fearing that we'll hear a gunshot or anything indicating that these men are in our house. But there was just silence. The only sound was the dog's barks outside. After what seemed like hours, mostly likely a couple of minutes, we heard stomping coming up the stairs and my heart rate quickened. I remember shutting my eyes and praying that it was my dad with Ellie and Vince. Luckily it was. We all hid for a while and no one dared to speak. The dogs had seemed to calm down considerably, but they were still barking every now and then. The gate intercom rang and my dad told us to wait while he checked if it was the security company, and sure enough it was. He opened up and the nightmare was over. I remember standing up and my knees buckling from the adrenaline my body had endured. The armed security somehow notified the right police, and everyone investigated the garden. They found that there was actually 7 pairs of footprints, and that these guys bent these spikes on our wall and just climbed over. We got an electrical fence shortly after, so there must have been 2 other guys hiding in these shadows that my dad hadn't seen, which is actually creepy in its own right. South Africa's violent crime is quite bad, and it's too common for horrible things to happen during home invasions. I was obviously so young at the time that I didn't know the horrors of the world, and I was just scared of my family getting hurt. But now that I'm older, just the thought of 4 women being in the house and my mom being in nothing but a bath towel gives me chills to this day. The cops said the fact that there were so many guys instead of like 1 to 3 indicates that these guys possibly had sinister intentions. Thank goodness nothing happened to my family, and I'm forever thankful for my dad's quick thinking regarding the panic button. Also, I'm so glad my dad understands multiple languages and could manipulate the situation to benefit us. Lastly, my family will forever be in debt to our good boys and girls that warned us that night. A terrifying and life-changing outcome would have 100% happened that night, had it not been for our incredible dogs. From that day onwards, my dad always gave them leftover rice or meat with their dinner. R.I.P. Impy, Shudo, Dash, Fudge, Winkles, and Pikachu. I'm sure there is a special place in heaven reserved for you angels.